Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this Value and Ethics Subcommittee. I just have a few things to say before we move on to the formal agenda for today's meeting, which will be led by the Chair. First, the formal legal standing of the meeting is being held under the Government Statutory Instruments, Local Government England, Local Authorities, Coronavirus, Flexibility of Local Authority Meetings, England Regulations 2020. To take account of these regulations, Bristol City Council has produced a set of virtual meeting protocols, and these are available on our website. This means that the decisions made by the committee today will have the same standing and validity if they've been made in person at City Hall. So can I just ask that members of the committee ensure that your sound is muted when you're not speaking, and when you've spoken, remember to mute your sound again. And if you wish to speak, please can you indicate that by raising your hand on the feed. So I'll now pass on to the chairperson to move through the formal agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting. I don't assume we have to do any introductions. I think everyone here, I see the councillors on the meeting, and I see also that Tim is on the meeting as well. So we'll move away from that very quickly. Fire alarms, again, because we're working from home, none of that, one of those announcements need to be made. Swiftly on to declaration of interest, and anyone who wishes to make a declaration, please.
Yes, please. So I have been advised to declare a pecuniary interest. I've written a book about my experiences of local government. I've considered today's agenda and currently do not feel the need to withdraw from any item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Any comments or anyone else who wishes to make a declaration? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. We'll go straight into it then. The agenda for today's meeting. Sorry, I'm struggling a bit with my tech, and I don't have my slides before me, but I believe it is just one agenda item, which is to consider the RIPA policy. Oliver, you're still on the call. Are you please able to just confirm to us?
Yes, it's just that one item, Chair, just the RIPA item that you've mentioned. Just to be mindful that certain sections of that are exempt, so we need to be careful about how we discuss that because this is a publicly broadcast meeting at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll open the floor. I assume everyone understands the background to this. Just as a reminder, it was that we received notification from Nancy Wallison. This was about a month ago, where she was informing that the committee needed to make some considerations regarding the RIPA arrangements. At that time, there was a debate as to whether it was something to be considered by this committee or something to take forward to the larger order committee to consider. And the intention is for this meeting to have that sort of larger conversation or debate. So again, the floor is now open for anyone who wishes to put forward a position. I know as part of the pack, there was that policy document has been shared. And I don't know if anyone has any immediate comment. Okay, Tim's hands up. Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Would it help if I just gave a few introductory comments on the report as the Senior Responsible Officer for our RIPA policy?
Yes, please. That'll be
I take what you say about the terms of reference of the committee, and perhaps that's something that we can come back to in due course. But as things currently stand, this committee does have this responsibility for oversight of our RIPA procedures in its terms of reference. The RIPA powers have been in place for going on for 20 years now, and this council has had a policy in place for a number of years, details of which are set out in the appendix to this report. There was an inspection of the council's RIPA procedures a little earlier in the year, and that's normal practice by the Office of Surveillance Commissioners, and we've had the first inspection for 4 years now. The last one was in 2016. The details of that inspection and the recommendations that came from it are an exempt document, as are the details around the two particular cases that where we have carried out RIPA surveillance in the last 12 months or so. I'm accompanied on the call this afternoon by Sarah Sharland, who's our RIPA monitoring officer and does the day-to-day oversight of the council's policies and procedures, and advises internal departments on the scope of the powers, and advises on individual cases and whether they would be appropriate to whether they would meet the requirements of the policy in terms of some form of surveillance. The only other point that I would say is that as the council's senior responsible officer, I have a number of years' experience myself working around the RIPA regime, having fulfilled an equivalent role to that Sarah discharges at Bristol City Council, at both the two previous councils I've worked at over the last 10 years. So I have a good working knowledge of how these procedures work, and I'm briefed at least on a quarterly basis, but more frequently should the need arise in respect of individual cases. That's all I'd say as an opening piece, Chair, but myself or Sarah would be happy to take any questions from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. Councillor Stevens, see your hand is raised.
Thank you very much. So these are questions to the Senior Responsible Officer. And it's around making sure I understand what these RIPA regulations are about. So it seems to be about covert surveillance as opposed to anything that's open. And it seems to be connected with personal information. So I'm interested in exploring sort of grey areas whether RIPA covers things like people revealing private information on social media. For example, if you spread private information to the world, obviously it's not private anymore. But if you spread private information to just your friends, which I think on things like Facebook, you can limit its circulation, whether or not that still counts as personal information. You know, imagine you just announcing you've been diagnosed with something. My second one, again, is exploring the grey areas, is whether uncovering, say, a private letter from your doctor is found in the recycling that you've put out, whether that counts as covert surveillance. And also, in fact, very sadly, something I've had to do, which is rummaging through big trade waste bins to find out the source of fly tipping, seeing which the labels into which cafe, etc. So maybe personal information doesn't apply to businesses. So those are three examples: sort of partially restricted social media, letters in recycling, and seeking to find perpetrators of fly tipping. Okay,
so in respect of the first one, what we're really talking about there is directed surveillance, whereby you know, that's one of the procedures that can be followed to undertake this sort of investigation. The difference between there being a publicly available Facebook page and something which is on a secure sort of closed list of people is you would need to get yourself onto that closed list. And in doing that, you're going beyond sort of directed surveillance. You're almost having to befriend someone. So you're into the territory, arguably, of a covert human intelligence source. Okay, so it's possible, but to use those powers for that purpose, but
Okay.
it's not something that we've seen here, I'm afraid. So the second one, recovering letters from bins. I think that was what you were suggesting.
Yeah, recycling, because I've been well trained.
Yeah. So you're potentially again into the realms of a covert human intelligence source that is being living in the same premises as the individual that's the subject of investigation. So again, that is a way of obtaining information. Obviously, you'd need authorization for all of these things.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the third one, so that was the fly tipping.
Yeah, trying to find the perpetrator of fly tipping.
Yeah. So there's various covert, but as well as overt ways of doing that, and a lot of the environmental enforcement work that is done in an overt way. So for instance, if there are hotspots where there's hotspots where fly tipping is regularly taking place, then there may well be CCTV cameras that are put up, but alongside those will be a sign that says CCTV monitoring taking place. So that wouldn't require an authorization, because it's made apparent that the surveillance is being done, whereas if you had a more covert way of doing it, then perhaps in those circumstances you would certainly need an authorization.
Okay, thank you.
I think in and amongst your questions, Councillor Stevens, there are ways that the council can conduct surveillance which doesn't require RIPA, and that is done in an overt way. But what this does is enable us to acquire information that we wouldn't be able to do by those ordinary means.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Sarah Sharland has anything that she would like to add to those, Chair, just to supplement what I've just said.
The only thing was also kind of the definition of surveillance leads to kind of a planned and perhaps organised and perhaps taking place more than once. So one quick look at somebody's social media probably doesn't amount to surveillance, but if you're doing it in a planned investigatory manner, then it would.
So, for example, if you had, if you had a software that was looking at social media posts over a period of time and reporting back, that would certainly be covert surveillance, would it? Now,
if it was being done covertly and in that on an organised, ongoing way, then yes. Yeah.
But presumably, it still has to be personal information, is it, to trigger it, or can it be any information?
It can be any information.
Okay.
I mean, what you get an authorization for is for the actual surveillance. Okay. But if you can get it overtly, because it's public information, you wouldn't need to do the covert surveillance.
No. Okay. All right. That's fine. I will stop my questions. I suspect, well, I can see Liz's, and Tim might have as well. So I've got as far as I've opened up a whole can of worms, I think.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. I think a quick point of clarification from me before I allow any other questions from the other councillors on the meeting. In section 3.7.1 of the document, the policy document that was shared with us, it states the Audit Committee for Bristol City Council reviews the council's use of RIPA on a periodic basis. So is that the larger audit committee, or is that the values and ethics subcommittee? I think it's important we clarify that. Tim, what's the intention behind that?
So the drafting of the policy there, Chair, is as it has been for a number of years. That part of it hasn't been updated in the time that I've been with the council. However, I suspect that the terms of reference for the Value and Ethics Subcommittee, which has only come into existence in the last couple of years, has perhaps just they're not quite in sync. Given that this subcommittee is is a subcommittee of the audit committee. I think it's not an issue in and of itself, but it does seem to me, if you like my view, that it might be a better place for this this subject to be considered at the audit committee rather than the value and ethics subcommittee in due course. It strikes me that this is a sort of matter that would fall within the purview of the audit committee in terms of them wanting to seek assurance around how the council's processes and procedures are structured and used. That's not quite how we use the value and ethics subcommittee, but I'm fairly relaxed either way about it, given that this is a subcommittee of the audit committee and the membership is the same, albeit a reduced number.
Yeah, it is slightly reduced, but yeah, I agree with you. Subject to, I don't know, it'd be nice to get the opinions of the other members in the meeting as to clarifying where that goes. I think that would apply to the larger committee. Yeah. I'm seeing a limited view. Sorry, I'm on the meeting on my tablet. Are there any other questions or are there any other hands raised for anyone? Okay, Councillor Radford, yes?
Thank you, Chair. I hadn't got this one question, but can I just go back to Councillor Stevens' question with regard to obtaining documentation that's in someone's recycling or in their fly tipping? So that's actually looking at information that has been put on the curbside and it's not actually now in that person's private residence. So is that something that falls under the fact that you have to have a RIPA if it's if it's an investigation that the council are looking at, or because it's now on the curbside and so pretty much anyone could walk past and pick it up, is that then not seen as something that would fall under that?
So there's two scenarios in the question that has been asked there. The first is whether someone can just walk along and pick out what's in somebody's rubbish. I think that the likelihood of someone being able to do that is quite limited. What you're more likely to find in practice is where there has been a fly tip, and bearing in mind, someone leaving their curbside collection is not fly tipping. That's what they normally do with their refuse. But where there has been a fly tipping, it is common practice by enforcement officers to establish whether there's anything in that fly tip that would identify who the perpetrators were. Now that in itself wouldn't require a RIPA authorization.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that helps. Thank you. And then just moving on to the non-RIPA, do we have instances where council officers make their own decision that they don't need to have a RIPA and therefore they don't also bother to do a non-RIPA either? Or do you feel that there is a process in place that all staff understand that there still has to be a form filled in for a non-RIPA situation as well?
So I'll answer very briefly, but I think I'm going to pass over to Sarah Charland because she deals with these types of cases more regularly than I would. But we do have widely disseminated information on the council's internal network that provides officers with the right advice and guidance and the appropriate forms to fill it should they need to undertake surveillance that doesn't fall within the requirement for RIPA authorization. The one thing that I would say is that notwithstanding that they don't need a RIPA authorization, a lot of the principles that underpin how we would conduct that surveillance still apply equally to that type of work, despite it not requiring that formal authorization. Chair, may I pass across to Sarah Charland because she may have a little bit more further detail she can give on how we deal with those cases on a more daily basis.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. The enforcement teams in the council, the authorising officers are the managers of the enforcement teams in the council, and they're very well versed on RIPA and doing non-RIPA when it's not RIPA. So I would feel very confident that they are doing that, and I have regular meetings with them because they're my clients, so we talk about that among other subjects. The social care side, again, there's a lawyer in the team who works with me on RIPA and is also a child protection lawyer, and speaks to the service manager in child protection about kind of non-RIPA social media, potentially covert surveillance from the child protection side. So we have set up those contacts, and as Tim said, there's training information on the source, and we do regular annual training, and there's a webinar, so there's information available for officers.
Okay, thank you. And my final comment was following the wasn't really an audit, but the investigation, the inspection, that's the correct word, those updates to the procedures, is that going to happen imminently?
They have been done. They're in the policy we have.
Oh, right, okay, because it's still dated September 2019, the policy document. So I thought maybe they hadn't been updated totally as yet, the one that we had.
And the document may be incorrect, because I'm certain that they were done before this committee. Right. Okay.
I think the thing that I was picking up upon was when the RIPAs were being cancelled. So it didn't come across to me that there was any extra procedures being put in place within this policy for is it the reviewing officer to make sure that all those procedures are in place to make sure that they've been cancelled in a timely fashion. It still felt as though it was up to the authorising officer. So I just wanted to check that had been done, or because this one is dated September 2019. That's with the minutes.
Yeah. If I could just, without straying too far into exempt material, Chair, I think some of the information in the agenda for today does touch on the points that Councillor Radford has mentioned. We have updated our policy prior to this committee, and since we had the inspection, I think it's a typographical error that the policy still says 2019 rather than 2020. It was reviewed 12 months ago. The point that Councillor Radford was making is more around how we operate our procedures rather than the policy not being correct. And the policy is correct. I think there's been a number of years since our RIPA powers were last used. As I was saying to Councillor Stevens just before the meeting, since 2016, the first time we used those powers was 2019, and there was quite a lot of change in the council during that period of time. It's the recommendations that have come back that have been revisited have been addressed, and we have appropriate oversight and experience within the council to ensure that any matters that were overlooked in the past won't be overlooked in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors, and thank you, Tim. Okay, Councillor Kent has a question.
Thank you, Chair. It'll be quite a quick one, because I think Mr. O'Gara probably actually answered my question, but I just wanted to double check. Appendix B, which is exempt information, has a list in it. That list, is that an example, or is that the totality of RIPA cases?
So as the public report says, we carried out 2 RIPA authorisations in the period 2019 to 2020. Since the last inspection in 2016, those are the only 2 authorisations that this council has made.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you again, Tim. So based on, do you have a question, Councillor Stephen, or comment? Okay, carry on.
Just a brief one. Councillor Radford reminded me of Nonripper. So there was a time where various social media were being monitored by the council. Would that have required a non-RIPA authorisation?
Quite a generic question, Councillor.
Oh, okay. Well, my understanding is that I think it was Twitter, but it might have been others. And for a year or so, it was monitored who was saying what on Twitter about Bristol City Council, about the mayor, things like that. I don't know the exact detail because I wasn't one of the people that was tracked. But I think it's now public knowledge, and consequently it's sort of out, it's overt. But there was a time when it was covert. And if they'd followed procedures properly, my question is, should they have done a non-RIPA form? And you might decide to check this out and come back another time.
I'm not familiar with the scenario that you're.
Yeah. Okay.
Stephen, so.
Well, I'll check with Councillor Kent because he's more familiar with me, and then we'll send you an email.
Okay, perhaps we can address that outside the committee. If it's about an individual case, then it's probably best addressed outside of the committee.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So far you've answered our questions around process and policy and the guidance document. You've also confirmed that this committee has responsibility for the RIPA process, at least subject to any escalations or whatever periodic review happens within the larger audit committee. I guess for me, it's then understanding regarding the inspections. Is there any, because we did talk about certain aspects of this meeting being exempt and others not. Do we then proceed? Is there a conversation to be had around those inspections? Or what then is the flow of the process? Or just to clarify, for my understanding.
So the letter that we had from the following this inspection is appended to your papers as an exempt item.
So I haven't seen those. Sorry to interrupt you, Tim. For some reason, I didn't get them.
Okay, I'm not sure why that wasn't the case, Chair.
Okay.
If I may just add that the letter from the inspector confirms that no further physical inspection was required, and we were subject to a light touch inspection regime this time, and I don't envisage that we'll have a further inspection for another 3 or 4 years. And I would have thought, given that we are a fairly limited user of our RIPA powers, that would also be a light touch inspection at that time. If there are matters that are raised in the inspector's letter, which we need to discuss, then we can move into an exempt session, which I suggest we would need to do at the end of the public part of the meeting.
Okay. So, so are there any questions? I guess open question for the group. Are there any matters then that we need to bring to exempt? And then we'll then coordinate that for that aspect. Okay. Okay. I've seen Councillor Radford, Councillor Stevens, and Councillor Kent. Okay. Responding in the negative. Okay, thank you. Then I guess, are we able, is there anything further to be discussed or raised then? Otherwise, it might be that we then bring this meeting to a close. Oliver, I assume that's the end of the agenda. Are there any other matters?
Chair, can I confirm that the subcommittee is formally noting the report and its contents?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oliver, is there anything else? Or
No, Chair, unless there's any other business that the members want to bring up, that's it for this, Chair. So if not, then we can close the meeting if everyone's happy to do that.
Okay, I am happy with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. You've given us a little bit of time for lunch before 2 o'clock, so I'll see you then.